Okay, so now we've got ourselves to a point where the voltage regulators are in, the CPU's in, the heat shield, heat sinks are in place, and the fans are in place, the cabling outputs are good to go, the front end controller interface cables are good to go, and basically we have proper alignment in the back. And remember what I told you about when you saw these little no screws points? Well, the reason why the no screw points are visible now is because the appliance interfaces, and in this case, this is a power unit that interfaces in there, goes down into these placements as you see here, and they lock into play and they fit into those screw feeds. So over here we have a multi-NIC header here, an Intel card sitting on this riser grid, and when we put this guy into its place, we will see how well it fits, and it will lock down into its home. Give me just a second. It's hard to get that aligned. There you go. So it goes down into its holes, and again, those threaded points are for these screw points only, and that's what locks the motherboard down. So by making sure you see that, you will be fine. Don't panic about your access or your capacity. You do want to look inside, of course, to make sure that your, in this case, PCIe extends a riser card, which is not in place quite right, but will be in just a second. Hang on. Okay, and so now it's in pretty decently, so that's good. So as you see, the power supply feeds here, and this is where the power supplies will go in the back, and they will anchor down the motherboard, and it almost looks exactly like it was with the previous motherboard, only that the motherboard is more capable. So the last part of this is you're getting ready to put everything back in outside of your what's called a flush cover, and the power supply casing. You want to make sure that as you're putting this in, you'll notice right here at the front screw lock, there's a sleeve. Now this sleeve right here, if it doesn't align correctly into that little sleeve lock, you will be able to put the power supply in, but you will not be able to close the lid. Because basically, in a nutshell, that screw lead will not be able to go flush, like you see here. That's flush, and that's flush. So by making sure that you've got it properly aligned, you can bring this screw down and get it below the threshold of the actual edge of the case housing so that the case housing can cover it. Now the next stage of this, of course, is to put in the RAID controller card here, down in this area, and to set up the shield housing for the fan flow. Okay, so now we're at the point, we're in stage where we've put in the feed SATA read and SAS read cables, these guys right here, in and are fed into their cable endpoints, which will go to this RAID controller here. This is a PT400. Very popular card. It does a decent job. It does decent on caching, and it's just functional all around. Can't miss. You can't just. Yeah, it's just a great card. It's going to, of course, go into its home, and in this case, that home is right here. And we secure it, and it is secured. And then, of course, we want to go ahead and put on the SAS SATA interface cables, and then that allows us to be able to go to the next and final stage, and that is to put the actual complicatedly difficult plastic fitter. As you can see, its housing is kind of odd. It does have the batteries for the RAID controller to help right when you're in fast cache mode, and basically you're going to be placing this into its home and getting it properly in place, which will pause the video and get that done so you will see how that works, and then we can go to the next step. Okay, so now we have the plastic fitting in place. We've got our basic CMOS battery backup in play in supporting fast cache mode on the RAID controller. We have the feed for the SAS and RAID interface cables being put in play, and we want to make sure we want to avoid this guy right here, because that can cause us problems and, of course, possibly damage the cabling. So this unit is now back together from start to finish with the new motherboard. It's been upgraded, it's been cleaned, it's been prepped. Now, of course, the big challenge is to put the power supplies in and give it a shot to see if it will power up. Okay, so now we've got this unit hooked up here. And the key thing about this whole exercise is how can you do this without being ridiculously anal about software revs, BIOS updates, and so on and so on. And as you can see, this is still our same unit here. Same set of drives, same set of platform. It's booting up clean and clear. And that we are doing pretty good here. I did not have to go into the BIOS. It does automatically adjust with the processor stack. And of course, it is a new motherboard as well. So when that came through and it began bringing itself up, it immediately began the process of reading the RAID controller, which, by the way, I did nothing special with. I just basically took it out, replaced the motherboard, put the RAID controller back in. The RAID controller was read clean and good to go, and then at that point in stage, we're operational. So, I'm going to do this again with the second chassis with this 9, not record, but to show you that it's a repeatable process and that it's cost effective. I'll see you in a bit.